Naomi Evans had it all: love, hope, and a promise of forever, until the billionaire who vowed to protect her shattered everything and walked away the night she told him she was pregnant. Left to rebuild her life from nothing, Naomi found strength no one expected, until a cruel twist brought them face to face again, this time with the truth on full display. Will he fight for redemption, or is it too late? This is a story of betrayal, resilience, and the power of a mother's love. Where are you watching from? Let us know, and don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories. The wind whipped softly through the canyons of Manhattan as Naomi Evans adjusted the headset on her ear and jogged across the marble lobby of the Waldorf Astoria. The Winter Hearts benefit was in full swing, and every inch of the hotel gleamed like something out of Gatsby's wet dream. Naomi, 22, carried herself with quiet poise, her frame slim, her posture alert, her rich brown skin glowing under the glimmering chandeliers. She wore a simple black cocktail dress and practical flats, a stark contrast to the diamonds and designer gowns swirling through the crowd. But there was a grace in her every movement, the kind that made even seasoned servers step aside with nods of respect. Naomi didn't belong here. Not really. She wasn't a donor or a debutante. She was an NYU literature major, pulling a last-minute gig as an assistant to the event coordinator, hustling behind the scenes to earn extra money for her mother's medication. Yet even amidst the gilded banisters and champagne-slick laughter, she moved with purpose, a clipboard in one hand and elegance in her step. She was fixing a crooked centerpiece, white orchids with glitter-dipped pine cones, when she stepped back, bumped into a passing server, and felt a tray of champagne flutes teetering behind her. Reflex kicked in. Naomi turned, one hand steadying the waiter, the other catching two glasses mid-fall before they could shatter. "Whoa," the waiter gasped. "That was miraculous." "Just good instincts," Naomi replied with a small laugh, adjusting the tray for him before stepping aside. "I'd call it ballet," came a voice behind her, smooth, low, with the kind of polish that could only belong to someone too rich for their own good. She turned and found herself staring into gray-blue eyes so sharp they looked like cracked ice. The man standing before her was devastating in a midnight tux, tall, sculpted, and, oh God, it was him. Adrian Blake. The Adrian Blake. Tech prodigy. Environmental disruptor. Forbes list golden boy. In real life he looked less polished. Not in a bad way. His jaw was shadowed with stubble, and there was something tired behind the charm in his expression, like he'd rather be anywhere but here. Still, his smile, when it broke, was disarming. "Thank you," she said, careful to keep it professional. "No one wants to start the night with wet shoes and glass cuts." "No," Adrian replied, taking a sip from a newly salvaged flute. "But I think you just saved me from a very expensive insurance claim. I'm Adrian." "I know," Naomi said before she could stop herself. "And I'm working." His grin deepened. "That makes two of us. Only, I suspect your job has more purpose than mine." She raised an eyebrow. "The benefit is for climate literacy. Isn't that one of your things?" Adrian looked momentarily surprised, then nodded. "Touché." Before Naomi could excuse herself, a tall blonde in crimson silk approached, placing a possessive hand on Adrian's arm. "Darling, the press is waiting," she purred, barely glancing at Naomi. "She's helping me," Adrian said smoothly, not moving. "And she's got better conversational skills than most people in this ballroom." Naomi's cheeks burned. She wasn't used to attention, especially not from men like him. She murmured something about needing to check the silent auction list and began to back away. "Wait," he said, not unkindly. "Will you be here all night?" Naomi nodded, not trusting her voice. "Good," he said, eyes twinkling. "Then maybe I'll finally enjoy one of these galas." She turned quickly, heart hammering, and forced herself to disappear back into the crowd. But as the evening progressed, she felt his gaze more than once, a quiet tether through the noise and artifice. When the auction began, she lingered near the shadowed edge of the room and watched, astonished, as Adrian bid a small fortune on a signed Langston Hughes anthology. Later, while clearing leftover programs, she found the book resting on a table. Inside the cover, in firm, slanted handwriting, these words should be with someone who understands them. "Have dinner with me." And beneath it, his number. Naomi stared at it for a long moment. Her brain told her this was a bad idea. But her heart had already begun writing poetry. Their first dinner took place in a quiet Italian restaurant tucked into a sleepy corner of the West Village. Naomi arrived 5 minutes early, half hoping he wouldn't show, her nerves barely masked beneath a pressed blouse and borrowed coat. But Adrian did show, right on time, smiling in that disarming way again. No entourage, no pretension. Just him. And when he sat across from her, asked her about her favorite author, instead of talking about his billions, something inside her softened. Over mushroom ravioli and sparkling water, they talked about Toni Morrison and Baldwin, about climate justice and how hard it was to find decent coffee north of 23rd Street. Adrian confessed, almost sheepishly, that he'd wanted to be a writer once. "Before I figured out that writing didn't pay enough to cover my mom's hospital bills," he said, twirling his fork. Naomi recognized that kind of pivot, the one born from necessity, not ambition, and found herself opening up about her mother's lupus, about growing up on the edge of Bed-Stuy where poetry had been her refuge. "I thought I'd be the one helping her," Naomi said, eyes downcast. "But now I'm just trying to hold us together with part-time jobs and duct tape dreams." Adrian's expression didn't change. He didn't pity her. He just nodded. "That sounds like real strength to me." When he walked her home that night, snow falling soft and slow, he didn't try to kiss her. Instead, he handed her a new book, an old copy of The Blue Sky with a yellow sticky note on the first page, for the girl who sees beauty others miss. After that night, things moved faster than either of them expected. Adrian started texting every morning. Naomi, despite her cautious instincts, found herself waiting for those messages with a flutter of anticipation. He invited her to a jazz show at a friend's loft, then a late-night visit to a 24-hour bookstore where he bought her a worn edition of Langston Hughes's selected poems, just because it reminded him of her laugh. She took him to Prospect Park one Sunday afternoon, where they fed ducks and shared plantain chips from a food truck. There, surrounded by noise and life and no photographers, he seemed lighter. "Nobody here cares who I am," he said with a half-smile. "They'd care if they saw your shoes," she teased, nudging his pristine boots. He laughed. "You keep me grounded, Naomi." And he did try. He asked about her mom's health, helped quietly with prescriptions when Naomi's check came up short. When midterms threatened to overwhelm her, he stayed up on FaceTime reading flashcards and reciting poetry lines just to help her focus. His world of rooftop parties, private jets, and board meetings faded when they were alone. With Naomi, he was just Adrian, a man who wanted something real. But not everyone approved. At an art benefit 2 months into their relationship, Naomi wore a second-hand gown she'd altered herself. As she adjusted her necklace in the bathroom, Lena Blake, Adrian's PR advisor and not-so-distant ex, entered, her heels clicking like accusations on the marble floor. "You clean up well," Lena said, eyeing Naomi through the mirror. "Though I hope you understand, this world isn't exactly forgiving. Especially to girls who don't come with a pedigree." Naomi didn't flinch. "I wasn't aware love required a resume," Lena smirked. "Just be careful. Adrian's attention is intense, but it has an expiration date." Naomi left the bathroom without replying. But the words clung to her later that night as Adrian held her hand during a private rooftop dinner overlooking the skyline. "You're quiet," he noted, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. "I'm just thinking how strange this all is," she admitted. "You, me, here. Strange good or strange dangerous?" She looked at him, really looked and smiled. "Maybe both." He leaned in then, pressing his forehead to hers. "Naomi, I don't know where this is going, but I know I don't want it to stop." That night, as the city pulsed below them and their fingers intertwined beneath the stars, Naomi began to believe in the dangerous possibility of forever. The wedding was small by billionaire standards, but felt like a fairy tale to Naomi. Strings of lights floated above the rooftop garden of the Blake Foundation headquarters, overlooking Manhattan's shimmering skyline. Naomi wore an ivory dress with delicate lace sleeves, her curls pinned back with a single pearl comb. Adrian had given her the night before, tucked inside a poetry book. Her mother, seated in the front row with a warm blanket over her knees, cried quietly through the ceremony. Adrian's eyes never left Naomi's face, not even for a second. They exchanged vows written in their own words, hers laced with poetry, his filled with quiet regret for the walls he'd built before her and a promise to never stop tearing them down. "You are the storm that softened me," he whispered, "the stillness I didn't know I was searching for." Their kiss was tender, not showy, not for cameras but for survival, for two people who'd risked everything to meet in the middle of worlds that rarely touched. At the reception, Naomi's college friends danced barefoot with Adrian's tech circle, two realities colliding in laughter. It felt real, like they'd built something that might just withstand the pressure of the world. But pressure always comes. In the weeks after the honeymoon, the shimmer faded, slowly, then all at once. Adrian returned to a startup in crisis, an acquisition under federal scrutiny, investors threatening to walk. Long meetings became longer. His texts grew shorter. Running late. "Rain check dinner? You okay?" Naomi understood, or tried to. She knew what it was to carry the weight of obligation, but she hadn't expected to carry it alone. The first time she brought it up, they were halfway through takeout on the penthouse floor, sitting cross-legged on the floor, the coffee table crowded with curry and unopened mail. "You've been somewhere else lately," she said gently, trying not to sound accusatory. "I'm trying to keep this company afloat, Naomi." Adrian didn't look up from his phone. "I know," she said, "but I miss you. We haven't really talked in weeks." He sighed and tossed the phone aside, rubbing his temples. "I'm sorry. Everything's just on fire right now. Once the deal clears, we'll take a weekend, okay?" She nodded, even smiled. But something inside her, quiet and sharp, tightened. Then came the moment she didn't plan for. She'd suspected for days. The nausea, the way coffee suddenly made her gag. The heaviness, subtle but unmistakable. She took the test alone in their bathroom, the box buried deep in the trash. When the second line appeared, she sank onto the tile floor and stared. A baby. She didn't tell Adrian that night. He came home late, exhausted, distracted. So she waited. Planned a dinner, his favorite, blackened salmon with lemon cousse. She wore the green silk dress from their engagement party, lit candles, played the jazz he loved. He didn't come. By 10, the salmon was cold and her hands trembled too much to hold a fork. She called his office. "He left at 5, his assistant said brightly. "He mentioned dinner plans. Assumed with you?" Naomi's heart turned to stone. At midnight, Adrian walked in. No apology, no explanation. He dropped his coat, poured a drink, and muttered something about a long day. "Where were you?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "I told you, I had meetings." "You left at 5. He froze. "Who said that?" "Does it matter?" she asked. "I made dinner. I waited." He shrugged, not meeting her eyes. "Can we not do this tonight?" Her voice cracked. "I'm pregnant." He looked up slowly, drink halfway to his lips. "What?" "I'm pregnant, Adrian." The silence stretched like wire between them. Then he laughed, short, sharp. "You're serious?" She nodded. "And it's mine?" Her breath caught. "What kind of question is that?" He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly pacing. Jesus, we weren't planning this." "No," she said, her voice low, trembling. "But it's happening." He turned away, muttering, Of course this happens now." In that moment, she saw it, the wall go back up. The version of him the world saw. Cold, calculated, closed. "I need some air," he said, grabbing his coat. She stared at the door long after it closed. The candles still flickered on the table, the salmon untouched. She whispered to the silence, hand resting on her belly. "I'm sorry, little one. I thought he'd be ready." The rain fell in heavy sheets as Naomi stood on the corner of 72nd and Lexington, her suitcase in one hand, her other protectively resting on the gentle swell of her belly. The doorman hadn't looked her in the eye when she handed over the key to Adrian's penthouse. "Good luck, Miss Evans," he'd said, voice low. No trace of the warmth he once offered her daily. Felix, it seemed, had made sure she was erased, quietly and thoroughly. Her phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. "My attorneys will be in touch. Please respect the boundaries we've agreed to. I'll provide financial support." No mention of the baby. No acknowledgement of the ache he'd left behind. Naomi deleted it without replying. She couldn't afford to cry anymore. Not now. Not with another life depending on her. She found shelter in a small cafe near NYU, nursing a cup of tea she could barely afford, watching raindrops chase each other down the fogged-up window. The barista asked if she needed anything else, and she smiled faintly, shaking her head. The kindness stunned more than the cold. Over the next few days, Naomi scraped together a plan, if it could even be called that. A low-rent hostel in Chinatown offered her a shared bunk. She took lukewarm showers and tried not to gag at the scent of mildew. She applied to jobs she was overqualified for, underqualified for, anything. A bookstore, a diner, a receptionist gig. Each rejection chipped away at her resolve, but she held her head high, hands steady on her stomach, whispering, "I'll figure it out." By the end of the week, she was nearly out of money. Morning sickness gnawed at her. Her coat barely fit over her growing belly. One morning, as the wind sliced through her bones, she paused in front of a Starbucks with a "Hiring Now" sign taped to the door. Not a dream job, but it was something. She walked in, clutching her resume with hands that trembled from hunger and nerves. Nora, the store manager, was a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and a sharp tongue. She glanced at Naomi's resume, then at her stomach. "You're 7 months?" "Almost," Naomi admitted. "You're going to be on your feet a lot. Can you handle it?" Naomi straightened her shoulders. "I don't have a choice." Something in her tone must have struck a chord, because Nora nodded and said, "Okay, be here tomorrow, 5 a.m. Don't be late." Naomi nearly wept with relief. That night, she moved into a studio in Washington Heights. The landlord, an older Dominican man named Mr. Quang Ruiz, eyed her belly and said gruffly, "First month now, second before the 15th, no exceptions." "I'll have it," she promised, handing over a wrinkled envelope of small bills. The apartment was barely more than a closet, cracked walls, a hot plate for a kitchen, and a shared bathroom down the hall. But when she unrolled her sleeping bag on the floor, she whispered to the shadows, "This is ours now, baby. It's not much, but it's ours." Each morning began in the dark. Naomi wiped down counters, brewed endless coffee, smiled through exhaustion. Customers barked orders, complained about foam, snapped fingers. But some noticed. A few regulars tipped more than usual. One left her a note. "You're doing great, Mama. Don't give up." By the end of the second week, Naomi had memorized dozens of drinks and learned to fake a smile even when her back ached and her ankles swelled. The work was relentless, but it was honest. And for the first time in weeks, she began to feel the faintest flicker of control returning. Then, one night, as she closed up, Nora approached with a clipboard. "Heads up, corporate's doing a random audit tomorrow. Wear your name tag." And, she paused, Naomi asked. Nora looked hesitant. "I need you to be ready for anything, just in case. Some big client is coming through. Guy with money. Likes things. Perfect." Naomi laughed, brushing flour off her apron. "Nothing about me's perfect." Nora tilted her head, eyes kind again. "You'd be surprised." Naomi nodded and turned off the lights. She had no way of knowing the man stepping through those doors the next morning, clean-shaven, in a camel wool coat flanked by a woman in designer heels, would be Adrian Blake. And she had even less idea how much seeing her again would ruin him. The bell above the Starbucks door jingled as Adrian Blake stepped inside, brushing snow from the shoulders of his coat. The cafe was warm, alive with the aroma of espresso and cinnamon, but it might as well have been a wind tunnel the moment he saw her. "Naomi." She stood behind the counter, sleeves rolled, a green apron clinging to her figure, her very pregnant figure. Her face had thinned, her eyes looked tired, but she was radiant in a way that nearly broke him. Her hand rested instinctively on the swell of her belly. Time froze, then slammed into him with punishing clarity. She hadn't been lying. Beside him, Serena leaned into his arm. "Well, this is unexpected," she said, her voice syrupy with cruelty. "Slumming it behind a coffee counter. How appropriate." Naomi's fingers tightened around the espresso pitcher, her knuckles whitening, but she didn't flinch. She met Serena's gaze with a quiet, unwavering calm. "Welcome to Starbucks," she said smoothly. "What can I get for you?" Adrian opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. His tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. He hadn't seen Naomi in nearly 6 months. Not since that night when she'd told him she was pregnant, and he'd walked out. Now here she was, carrying his child, still standing, still fighting, still beautiful. Serena wasn't done. She tilted her head, the red leather of her gloves creaking as she folded her arms. "You look bigger than the last time I saw you. Must be close now, huh? Raising a baby on tips and sympathy cards?" Naomi kept her composure, but her lips were tight. "Your order, please." "I'll have a venti chai latte," Serena purred, "and maybe a brochure for adoption services. Can't imagine raising a child in whatever squalor you're living in." The cup slipped from Naomi's hand and clattered onto the counter. She didn't blink. My child is not your concern. Adrian stepped forward, voice finally returning. Serena, enough. But Serena only smiled sweetly. She should have taken the money, Adrian. Playing the noble victim doesn't suit her. Get out, Nora said sharply from behind the pastry case, marching forward. We reserve the right to refuse service, and you're done here. Serena blinked in disbelief. Excuse me? You heard me. Out. Customers were watching now, the room silent except for the hiss of the espresso machine. Adrian turned to Naomi, his voice low, vulnerable. Is it mine? Her eyes blazed. How dare you even ask? His voice cracked. I didn't know. I didn't want to believe you'd. No, she snapped. You didn't want to believe the truth because it didn't fit the version of me you needed to walk away from. You needed me to be disposable. Her words landed like fists, and for once he didn't fight back. He just stood there, the weight of his failure finally fully settling. Serena grabbed his arm. Let's go. This is humiliating. Adrian didn't move. Naomi drew a breath and said quietly, You don't get to do this. You don't get to show up now after months of silence and pretend to care because it's convenient. She trapped you, Serena hissed. You said so yourself. Naomi laughed, bitter and soft. Trapped him? He chased me, proposed to me, lied to me, and when I needed him most, he vanished. Then she turned her back, wiping the counter with trembling hands. Go, Nora whispered to Adrian. Leave her alone. Outside, the snow fell harder. Adrian didn't remember walking out, only the sound of Serena berating him as they stepped into the street. He waved her off, eyes unfocused, jaw clenched. Back inside, Naomi's strength collapsed with the slam of the door. Nora caught her before she fell, leading her to the back. I'm so sorry, Naomi whispered, holding her belly. I didn't expect it to hurt this much. Nora pressed a glass of water into her hands. He's not worth your pain, but your baby is. As the snowstorm swallowed the city, Naomi sat in the break room, one hand over her belly, whispering to the tiny life inside. I've got you. Even if it's just us, we're going to be okay. She didn't know that across the city, Adrian sat in his penthouse, replaying every word, every look, every memory, and for the first time, realizing what true loss felt like. This story isn't just about love found and lost. It's about the strength it takes to rise when your heart has been shattered, the courage to choose dignity over comfort, and the quiet resilience of a woman who refused to let betrayal define her. Naomi's journey reminds us that healing linear and sometimes the person who breaks us is the one who teaches us what we truly deserve. Through Naomi, we see that love without respect is just illusion, and that no matter how powerful or wealthy someone is, it doesn't excuse cruelty. Real strength is found in the single mother waking up at 4 a.m. to keep a roof over her head, in standing your ground even when your knees are shaking, in protecting your peace and the future you believe in. And for Adrian, the lesson is equally clear. Redemption doesn't come from wealth, but from accountability, humility, and the willingness to change. You can't undo the past, but you can decide what kind of person you want to be moving forward. At its heart, this story is about transformation, not through perfect love, but through painful truth. Because sometimes the most powerful redemption is not in being forgiven, but in becoming someone worthy of forgiveness. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if this one moved you even a little, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter in the journey of the human heart.